What is that twinkling in the corner of your sparkling eye?
Hello, and welcome to another Dwarven Tavern video. This is not a review per se. Over the past few weeks, I've gotten a lot of requests for showing and telling how to be a better dungeon master for beginners. So we here at the tavern have decided, since it's what I love doing, that I will fulfill that request as best I can and talk a little bit about how to dungeon master. I know there are a lot of beginners. There's a lot of veterans. So if you are, don't be insulted by my speaking of basics in basic terms. But if you pay attention, you may learn something. You may not. I may learn something. I may not. So we'll just have to see how it goes. I've been dungeon mastering. Actually, I played a grand total of probably 3 sessions as a player character under the dungeon mastery of my best friend, who at the time was he had been playing D&D for quite a while, maybe 6 months before I actually got into it. He kept telling me about it. Man, you got to hear about this cool new game. It's called Dungeons and Dragons. And, you know, this was back in the day, so there it was. And I finally got into it. And when I did, I got the basic boxed set for basic Dungeons and Dragons. Okay, and I was blown away. I think the thing that most struck me about the game was the detail of, you know, your character can be of a different race, and your character can be a polyglot, speaking various languages, and so forth. So that truly got me. I was really happy with that. So, and it made my imagination just go berserk, which it hasn't calmed down yet. And I'm still playing. I'm still playing the game. Now, speaking of Dungeons and Dragons, I have been playing version 3.5 the longest. So, well, not really. Actually, yes, really. I've been playing 3.5 longer than version 1 or 2. The first age, the second age, they came and went, but the third age, and the halfway through the third age, version 3.5, that is the game that I am playing most of now. Most of my campaigns are in this version, 3.5. Although we have Horizon virtual campaign. We've got a Horizon from the Horizon books, which I'll actually do a review of those at a later date. But we have a cowboy campaign and a couple sci-fi campaigns, and we have a D20 future, D20 present, D20 past campaigns. We have a traveler campaign, which we're going to be talking about in an upcoming video. And wow, we have a campaign for just about every occasion. We even have one called, we've got a zombie apocalypse campaign. We have a campaign called the Apocalypse Train, where they have to get from A to B in the campaign on a train during an apocalypse. Imagine that. I kind of gave it away with the title. So anyway, talking about dungeon mastering. Now, when I did the review of the Dungeon Master's Guide 5, and we have a 5th edition campaign. No. So with the first, second, third, 3.5, fourth, and fifth edition campaigns, they're all pretty similar in that, and actually not only that, but in Hackmaster, in Pathfinder, and Castles and Crusades, love those games. Rifts, yeah, it's all the same requirement for this guy. And some games call him a game master, some call it the Hackmaster, or in Castles and Crusades, you're called the Castle Keeper and so forth, but it's all the same job. What is it? Well, the Game Master, the Dungeon Master, because we're going to be referring to D&D in this video. The Game Master, yeah, sure, I don't forget things. The Dungeon Master is responsible for everything that the characters see, taste, hear, smell, and feel. The Dungeon Master is the five senses of the player characters. The player characters are those elves and dwarves and drow and halflings and humans that the players roll up. So, aesthetically speaking, the Dungeon Master is kind of a director in that he gives the actors the stimulus and then they act upon it. So when your characters, when your PCs, your player characters, when they come into a room, they can't see it. They have to get it from you. And in order to do so, you have to be descriptive. You have to be a narrator. So, in addition to being the playwright, the director, and I mentioned this with the Dungeon Master's guide review, you have to be the playwright, the director. You have to be all the extras, the red shirts, as it were. And you have to be the adjudicator. You have to be the timekeeper. You have to be the judge, jury, and executioner, and the occasional fudger. And I said fudge because fudging die rolls are very important. So, how to start? You get the books, right? You get the Dungeon Master's Guide. You got the Player's Handbook, which a Dungeon Master should have as well. Okay. And then you've got the all-important Monster Manual, which has monsters in it. Yeah, you guessed it. So you get these books first, right? Now, if you choose, you can also get miniature figures. This is a mini, okay? This is a rather large mini. This is a Bone Claw, which is a pretty foul beast, and this is a Tyr, which is a kind of like an intelligent Yeti sort. And then, you know, you've got buckets of other minis from which to choose, right? And if you're really into it and you want to make the investment, you can get one of these vinyl mats that you can write on with a dry erase marker. Wipe it off when it's done. Don't let it sit too long because it will stain. There are green stains. I don't know if you can see it or not, but there are green stains on this from a green marker that stayed on there just a bit too long. But another thing that you can use is a nice cartographic program like Campaign Cartographer from Pro Fantasy Software. Love those guys. I mean, their program is fantastic. Do a lot of work with that. And so you get all this stuff and a pencil, right? And a notebook I have a notebook for each campaign that I'm running. So I've got like a stack of these spiral binders about yay thick. And then of course you want to get some dice, and the polyhedral dice, of course. This is a 2-sided die, right? And I got that from Game Science years ago, and just as an example, this is a 24-sided die from Game Science. This is a 7-sided die from Game Science as well. And I believe I also have, yes, I've got a 5-sided die from Game Science. They that fella makes some really interesting dice, and I'm probably going to do a review of some of them eventually. And this is a 10 in 10s, so the out one is 10s, the inner one is 1s, in a base 10 system, if you know your math. And I've got a couple rolling 4-sided. They're 8-sided with 4 numbers on them, and so forth. So it's all pretty standard, and it doesn't have to be really expensive. Maybe $6, $7, and you can get a really nice set of dice. I love my my bubble gums, my yellows, and my bones, and those are all from Chessex. So they're cool die makers and so forth. So you have your dice, you have your books, you got your minis if you want them. If not, you don't need them. You got your computer program with your overhead projector if you want for those graphic maps. What I usually do is I usually take an image, a map that I've drawn, and I put it in Photoshop, and I cover it with a black layer, and then I erase the layer as it goes. But there are other programs. We're actually going to be doing some reviews of some of those other programs to show how to be a better dungeon master with with computer programs. But I have a big screen TV that its only purpose is to show D&D maps, so they can see it. It's graphic, and there you have it. But for logistics, the minis are perfect because it shows line of sight and arrangement and movement rates and stuff like that. So all that comes later. What comes now is the whole dungeon mastering. When you start a game, you have to begin with a story. My best advice is to start with a couple of they call them published adventures, and they used to call them prefabs, prefabricated modules, and they have everything that you need. Now, when I did a review of the Rise of Tiamat and the Horde of the Dragon Queen, those are like prefab modules, only they're in hardback book form. That would be a good way to start. That would really be a good way to start the game, and I understand why they published the Horde of the Dragon Queen first, because that allows beginners to, begin, as it were. But if you are going to do your own dungeon and you want to create your own world, which is what I did. I was very ambitious when I first started dungeon mastering, because I wanted to create my own universe, my own world, and have my own, because it just seemed like the thing that I needed to do. It was my calling, as it were. I'm going to stop saying that. Okay. So what you do just to begin is you pick out the story that you want to do. Okay? So you've got a story you want to tell. And you want your players to interact in that story. Now, here's the key point of that story. They are your characters, your player characters are wild cards. You don't know what they're going to do. You don't know. You may want them to follow this storyline, but they may not want to. They may not know. So you let them go. You let them do what they want to do. And you adjust your story accordingly. Here's how we do it. You get your pencil and paper and you jot down your story hooks, your story ideas, those things that you want to have happen. You can call them plot points if you want. You have them go through the introduction of it, and you have them follow the plot points. And if the plot point happens, that's great. If they circumvent the plot point, don't punish them. You let them go. You let them do what they're going to do, and adjust your story to match their actions. So, just in the most basic of premises, you take your pencil and paper and you write down the plot points, what monsters or creatures or non-player characters called NPCs. You write down everything that plot point has in it, and just a brief summary escaped me. Just a brief summary of what's supposed to happen in that plot point. Okay, that's the introduction. Characters walk into a tavern. That's where most people begin. It's kind of a hackneyed trope, but it's pretty time-honored thing. So, the characters walk into a tavern. You have to get information to them somehow about what you want them to do, what's going on. And it's really not even about what you want them to do. It's about what's happening. You have to imagine your world as being an organic entity of its own, right? When there's a bar in Chicago right now that's probably open and there are probably people in it, and there's stuff that's happening. If I'm not there, it's still going to happen, right? If you're not there, it's still going to happen. You may be in Australia right now. So that's the way you kind of should imagine your world. Things are happening with or without the player character's presence or influence on what's going on. That makes it a little bit harder, but it makes it a little bit easier at the same time. So you get your information down for your plot points. You hope they go through it. And you make arrangements if they don't otherwise. Then you get the character's information. You write down who they are, their names, their armor class, their hit points, because you want to keep track of their hit points as well. Because, you say, well, you only took 4 points of damage. Like, I only had 2. So, if you keep track of the hit points, then you might be able to fudge a roll if you need to keep that character alive for whatever reason, and go that route. So you keep track of the hit points, the armor class. You also keep track of their, not necessarily their movement rate, because everything's kind of like 30, which I disagree with. I think there should be a more elaborate system for determining speed. And then you want to you want to keep track of their spot check, their listen check, and their saving throws. Because they all get saving throws, and if you need to roll something without them knowing it, you can do that. Because it's really awkward when you've got a guy saying, I'm going to go down the hallway and check for traps, and you roll and go, or you tell them to roll, and they say, oh, I rolled a 1. I really rolled a 1. And you go, oh, well, you didn't see it. And they're like, didn't see what? Well, I'm going to go back over it, and that opens up a can of worms. Whereas if you are just, playing and you make a roll, and you determine with this lovely green 16, or white 16 on a green die, you determine that they did see it, then you can tell them. If they didn't see it, then you don't have to tell them anything, because they didn't see it, or they didn't detect it in whatever arena it's detectable. So, That way, when you have all this information down, you also keep track of your marching order. But when you have all this information down, then you can refer to it when you need to roll behind your screen, which is a lovely device. I have a really, really cool one from Kinzer Co. That we use in every game regardless of what it is, and I'm actually going to do a review of that too because it's so cool. It actually got the Dwarven Tavern Award a few years back. And that's the Dwarven Tavern Award is one where every member of the Dwarven Tavern, all the taverniers here, have to give it 5 axes. And we did, so, because it just had so much information. Also, make sure you have a calculator, because numbers, especially if it's an intense situation. You keep track of their stats. You keep track of their monster stats. You make the plot points negotiable or expendable and stay ahead of them. Your job is not to boss them around. Your job is not to inflict karma. There have been many times when I've played with a dungeon master who was not, kind of a control freak, and who decided that karma was his responsibility. And I was playing a chaotic neutral character who did what they wanted. And long story short, he did things, and I actually talked about it in one of the other reviews. He did something to me, to my character, because of something that I, as a dungeon master, did to one of his characters in a different game. So yeah, don't be that guy. The best dungeon master is the one that makes their players feel challenged, and makes their players think and use critical thinking skills. It's a lot like being a college professor, which I am, and because if you're engaging, if you're entertaining, do all the voices, right? If you've got an orc party coming up, and you want to get orky with them, hey, yeah, oi. And so add actor onto that list of dungeon master responsibilities, because you have to be an actor. And a good dungeon master can keep people entertained for hours without rolling a single die, just in a conversation with his own characters. Seems a little odd, but it's really cool. Tavernier Ian is very good at that. He can have a conversation. He's a room full of people all by himself, as he has been known to say. So, with all your tools in your possession, grab your players, in a friendly way. No, maybe not. Depends on how they react. Grab your character, gather your characters, get your plot hooks down, your plot points, keep them entertained, keep them on the edge, but don't let them get hopeless, and be interactive with them. You're not actually, because I've had a couple of players actually be like, okay, well, God wants us to turn left. It's like that player doesn't play with us anymore, because that's not cool. That's not us. We dungeon masters we're not God. We are just the master of the universe that we create. But if you're a generous God, if you're a generous dungeon master, you know, give them things, magic. Let them find stuff. Let them get rewards for their hard work and bravery, or more importantly, for their role playing. Because when they role play well, sometimes you're role playing a coward, right? So if you're playing a thief, you don't want to reward a thief for going valiantly into battle. You know. However, you also don't want to reward the paladin for hiding behind his shield in a corner somewhere. So that's it's all about the role playing, and keep notes as to who has gotten what experience points. And I actually have my own little form that allows me to keep track of the players, and I'll actually post that on the website. And in a PDF, so you can download it and play with it and have fun. But it allows you to tally experience points awarded on the fly to the players as they go for a job well done or poorly done. And then when you give experience points out at the end of the session or at whatever point you do, then you can, you know, adjudicate and you can adjust it from there. So. This has been the first part of dungeon mastering tips and tricks. Not really tips and tricks, just good philosophy of being a good dungeon master. And when I in my next video, I'm going to go into a little bit more depth with each one of the items, like organization and you know, experience points and all that stuff. So. Hopefully you'll get something out of it. Hopefully you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like us and subscribe. Please share the video. We've had a lot of people sharing here lately, and it's been wonders for us. And subscribe. I may have said that, but if I didn't, subscribe, please. And leave comments. Let me know if I've said anything that was helpful or redundant or whatever, because I'm always here. So. On behalf of the whole cast and crew of the Dwarven Tavern radio show and podcast and review team, I am Dr. Jeff Goins, wishing for you to want for nothing but adventure. And at first I feared it, then I charged. Happy dungeon mastering. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.